You're listening to Rooted and Overflowing. Welcome to bonus episode number 2 of Rooted and Overflowing. I'm Letitia, and for this Root of the Matter entry, I'm going to share my reflection on the events of September 11th, 2001. To be connected to resources designed to help us become rooted in Christ during uneasy times, visit LetitiaEvans.com. The link will be in the show notes. And now, remembering 9/11, friendship, cosmetics, and sonic booms. On September 11th, 2001, I was working as a clerk, the third member of one of the cosmetics division's buying teams at the corporate headquarters for Elder Beerman department stores. I had not long gotten to work, and I was on the phone with my best friend. All of a sudden, my friend started saying, "Oh my God, oh my God, I can't believe I just saw this." And I was like, What did you see? And then she said, "Girl, they just showed on the news a plane hitting one of the Twin Towers." So in between the "Are you serious?" and "I can't believe this," we finally hung up. The office where I worked was a huge room full of cubicles. Phones were ringing, and the chatter and buzz about what many had just heard about had started to increase. The cafeteria had a TV, so staff and managers started heading down by the stairs and elevators to see what people on their phone calls were talking about. While nothing like the day for those who lost their lives and who were directly involved in the aftermath, September 11th, 2001 was unlike any other day. For the cosmetics division, the clerks were the only ones in the office because the buyers and assistant buyers, they were at one of the biggest meetings of the season to pitch their ideas. I want to say it was for Clinique. By mid-afternoon, when the buyers and assistant buyers returned to the office, they told us that they were presenting when the news started to break that the Twin Towers were struck. They were telling us about how the hosts didn't let the presenting groups know what was happening until they finished their presentations. I remember the assistant buyer that I worked with saying that she and others were wondering why people started looking at their watches and cell phones and PDAs. PDAs were personal digital assistants, so their devices were just going off. After the presentation, the whole meeting ended early. By mid-afternoon, I finally made my way down to the cafeteria so that I could see what was happening. The images that I saw on television made me feel awestruck and uneasy. How could this happen? Why did this happen? The tomato basil soup that I loved from our cafeteria didn't taste the same that day. On September 11th, 2001, not much work got done at the Elder Beerman corporate office. I lived in Dayton, Ohio. When I got home, I arrived in an empty house. My mother and grandmother and I shared a duplex. My grandmother lived on one side, and my mother and I shared the other. They were on a chartered bus trip headed to New Jersey, I think. I remember getting home, and I'm thinking it was around 5 o'clock or so, because if I remember correctly, my workday ended at 4:30. I was in the living room when 2 sonic booms shook the house. Sonic boom is the best phrase that I have to describe what I heard and felt. The dishes in the china cabinet and the tchotchkes on the shelves shook at the booming sound. At that point, I was just flat scared, and I remember running to my room, dropping to my knees, and praying. Soon after that, I called the man who was now my husband, but at the time was my fiancé. We had a long-distance engagement, and I was so glad to hear his voice all the way from North Carolina. He was in ministry at the time, and we talked a little bit about what happened. Experiencing the 2 sonic booms was scary. What was eerie about it, though, is that across the city, some people felt them and some people didn't. The instance did make the local news, and to this day, I don't know if there was ever an explanation as to what the sounds were and if they were related to the events of the day. By evening, my mother and grandmother had returned from their bus trip. The decision was made to cancel the trip, so the bus turned around so that everyone could come home. It was hard to feel one emotion on September 11th. By the end of the day, hearing about not just the Twin Towers, but also the plane in Pennsylvania just rounded out the emotional roller coaster. One minute, I remember feeling angry. The next minute, scared about subsequent attacks. And in between it all, I remember feeling glad that we had armed services on the front lines, people dedicated to protecting our country and doing what they were trained to do to help our country maintain the freedoms that are so dear to us. In 2021, it's an understatement to say that a lot has changed since September 11th, 2001. While we were a country united against the outside attack on American soil, we are currently divided about the truth of what happened on American soil January 6th, 2021. There are two scriptures that keep me grounded and also hopeful for our nation. Psalm 9, verse 17 of the New Living Translation says, "The wicked will go down to the grave. This is the fate of all the nations who ignore God." And the A clause, which is the first phrase of verse 12 of Psalm 11, it says, "Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord." And so my prayer remains, God bless America. Thanks for listening to this episode of Rooted and Overflowing. To listen on your favorite app, visit rootedandoverflowing.com. When you're there, you can also click the About tab and gain access to resources that are designed to inspire you in your walk with Christ. When you rate and review the show on your favorite app, it helps me to make sure I'm sharing information that's helpful. So let me know how I'm doing and invite a friend to listen. Until next time, stay rooted in Christ and overflow with gratitude.